Keith Smith covers the NBA, Yahoo Sports, Real GM. Joins us now to talk more about it on the Boardwalk Honda hotline, where things got interesting all of a sudden, where, Keith, we know that the Rockets don't have cap space, so they got to get creative, and they're going to try to get creative, it sounds like. Hey, Jimmy, why don't you tell the Sixers that you want to get traded here and come play home? So does it make sense for the Rockets to do this move? Is this the most creative they can get? A guy they've been in on, a guy they've been after. But at this stage of the game, with their current setup, do you like that ploy by Daryl Morey?
Yeah, I don't really like this move very much for them because when you look at it, unless they can get the NBA to agree to let them play with more than one basketball at a time, I don't know how you make it work with those three guys. It's just they're three ball-dominant players. None of them are great, spot-up shooters. None of them are willing to really play off the ball or anything like that. So it'll be really, curious to see how they make all that work. So I'm really, interested to see where all this comes from and how it comes together and how they get Philadelphia to agree to a deal, because the only sign and trade that really makes sense involves Eric Gordon and Clint Capella. Gordon makes a lot of sense for Philly. Capella really doesn't. So I think they would, need to move him somewhere else to a third team, and then it gets even messier. So I'm having a lot of trouble seeing how this one comes together. That said, when a star player wants where they want to be, they generally end up in that destination.
Well, yeah, we don't know if Butler wants to go there, though, right? This is the Rockets' way of saying we got to figure something out. So maybe we throw that out there and get the ball rolling on this, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the idea here is, hey, we're open for business. We want to do this. If we got to rope in a third team, which they probably need to, let's get moving on this, because that's going to take a little while to put together and get all figured out. So I think this whole thing is a way of, saying, all right, let's, as you say, get the ball rolling. Let's start getting things working here.
Yeah. So Butler, obviously, the Sixers can really wipe everything out by just offering them the max deal, right? I mean, if they just say 5/190. Is the feeling that the 5/190 puts everything to rest?
Yeah, I think it could. This is, if you remember, I think I probably even said this on your show. Don't give him a deal that he can at all think is an insult. Don't try to go cheap on him, anything else. This is a guy who's pretty cranky, at times. And if things aren't going his way, then he's going to be, really upset. And I could see him saying, forget it. I'm out. I'm going to go, anywhere else but here because you insulted me with a lower than max offer. So I think if Philly wants to keep him, you come with a big offer, and then, maybe it goes south in a year or two, but you figure that out then.
We're talking with Keith Smith here, Yahoo, NBA, Real GM, NBA free agency opens. Do you like the names Gordon and Capella in a return? Or if you're Philadelphia, is that not all that appealing to you?
I like Gordon for them. I don't think Capella makes any sense at all. He can't play along with Joel Embiid, and there's no reason to pay a backup center what they're going to play Capella. That's a complete luxury for 15, 20 minutes a game. Spot starter on those nights when Embiid doesn't go. That's just too much. So what I would like to see them do is flip Capella for depth pieces. They could return 3-4 rotation guys here that might actually be better for them. Generally, in the NBA, we like to say, 4 quarters don't necessarily equal $1. But in this case, Philly's already got their, they already have $2 bills and Embiid and Simmons. So now what you're trying to do is find all the pieces that fit around them. And as we saw, the severe lack of depth really hurt them at times last season. So I'd love to see them be able to fill that roster, and this may be the way to do it.
We know that the Sixers can, they could get a little greedy here if they want, right? I mean, obviously, Jimmy Butler could go to them and say, hey, guys, Houston came to me. I'm kind of interested. I'm not going to sign back here. I mean, the Sixers then can in return say, hey, we would like to add this. But what about, would Chris Paul make sense? Would the Rockets be willing to say, look, we want to get rid of that contract and do something like that? Or is that something that, no, they don't want to do that. They want to put Butler with Paul and Harden?
I think it could actually make some sense for the Rockets because I think, given the tension that's out there between Paul and Harden, now they've denied, it's not as bad as people are saying it is. I don't want to trade, is what Chris Paul said. But there's something there that doesn't come out of thin air, that those guys are, at times not the best match together. So I think that could make sense to, get rid of Chris Paul. And what that does help you with is that removes the massive salary obligation. Starting with this season through the next 3 years, Chris Paul's owed $124 million, including $44 million in the 2022 season. So that's, really tough to swallow. Now, for Philly, that doesn't make sense at all. I'd rather say Jimmy Butler walk away entirely than taking that kind of money on your books when you've already maxed out Joel Embiid. You're going to have to probably max out Ben Simmons, and then you want to build a roster around those two. That makes a lot of sense, and I'm not sure Chris Paul's that guy.
Keith, you look at the possibility of that deal. Who has the upper hand here? The Rockets, the Sixers, or Jimmy Butler?
Yeah, I think it's still Jimmy Butler. I know that seems weird because, it seems like it should be Philly because they're the ones who have to agree to a sign and trade. But there's enough teams out there where Butler could say, you know what, then I'm just going to go to the Clippers or I'll go, somewhere else and let them max me out instead if you won't work with me here. The NBA is a star-driven league. It really always has been. It will probably always will be. So for all that, Philly has to agree. Because the other option is, what if he says he doesn't want to come back, he resigns with you, then he's cranky, and come November, December, he's decided I don't want to be here, and he ruins the whole season the way he did with Minnesota. That's definitely not something Philadelphia wants to deal with. And then at that point, you've made a trade that much harder on you because you're having to move him with a much bigger number, which causes a lot of problems in and of itself.
Yeah, and obviously, the big thing here is I think the Sixers would know right away. I mean, they could offer him $5,190, and Jimmy could say, "Look, I'm not really interested in coming." So it seems like the opportunities are either I'm not interested in coming back here. You should take the Houston deal, or he signs.
Yeah, that seems to be the way it could go. Is because you'll have that sense of what does he want to do right away. My guess is they've already got a feeling on this, and I think this is just one of those things where guys are playing it out a little bit and saying geez, maybe I will go here, I'll go there, and or work through a different team or something like that, and then that becomes a whole thing of all right, well, how do we ultimately get here in the end? This could be, a play. Maybe Philly's made it known as, hey, we're not willing to go $5,190. Maybe we'll go $5,150. And this is his agent kind of sending that shot across the bow of, hey, you want him back? You better go $5,190.
We'll see how that all happens. Sunday, 6 o'clock is when free agency begins. Will Jimmy Butler ask for a trade? Will he just say, nah, I want to be here, and we'll see him back? Now, what about the other two guys, Harris and J.J. Redick? We've heard a lot about Harris maybe checking out both coasts here and tipping his toe in the water. Has there been more whispers about more interest in him? Are the Sixers going to have a harder time getting him back than maybe they thought?
Yeah, I think they're going to have to pay up. I don't think there's any chance that they're going to get any kind of bargain to bring him back. And I think the hope was we're going to have to go big on Harris. And I think the hope was maybe we can, avoid going full max on Harris. Butler was going to be the guy they have to go big on. So I think they're hoping, we can maybe save a little bit on Harris and make it work that way. And that's probably not going to happen now. I think what we're starting to see is there's a lot of cap space around, and a lot of teams have at least room for one max guy. And those teams, there's not enough guys that fit that role necessarily that are true max players. So if a team wants Tobias Harris, let's say it was the Sacramento Kings, fall in love with him and they really want him, then what the Kings could do is they could come and say, all right, you know what, we're going to, we'll overpay a little bit to get you here because we think that you're that piece that's going to take us to the playoffs or whatever it is. And then that puts Philly in a tough spot because they may have to max him out as well to keep him.
J.J. Redick, I know he's kind of the third guy here, but number one, any interest around the league on him? And number two, how realistic is it the Sixers can get him back at a number that works for them? I mean, I know the 1 year they overpaid to get him. Last year he took a big cut, but is he going to have to take another cut to come back?
Yeah, I don't think he's going to have to take a cut. I think you're looking to bring him back right around what he made this year, maybe a slight bump over that. A lot of that probably depends on what happens with Butler and Harris. We'll see, what it looks like. So, we'll ultimately, get sense of where that goes here over the next little bit. But as far as interest, it's weird because there's not a ton of interest because nobody really expects him to leave Philadelphia. Everybody assumes he's going to stay there. Now, if any word gets out that he's even open to leaving, interest will explode in JJ Redick around the league because this is a guy who he's one of the best shooters of all time in NBA history. Continues to be a great shooter. He's averaged. I just figured this out the other day when I was doing some off-season work that this was his career high scoring this past year. I never knew that. At 18.1 points per game. So that's, crazy that at his age, this deep into his career, he's putting up those kind of numbers. So, yeah, he would have a ton of interest. So teams just kind of, holding out and waiting to see, where it comes. But if there starts to be any sense that J.J. Redick's open to playing for somebody else, teams will line up to sign a guy like him.
Okay, let's get our hands dirty with some of the other stories that are going. Number one, I guess we could start with Kevin Durant, who was officially declined his player option, $31 million. He is now an unrestricted free agent. So, New York, Brooklyn, Golden State, what is the Durant plan here?
Yeah, I think he hit on the only three options, but I do think that there's something to the way the Nets are angling. The Nets have some inclination that they've got something moving because they're not just making space to, or making room and clearing these guys out just to have it. They're doing this purposely. And, it sounds like Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant may both be on their way to Brooklyn. And then what you have is a situation where Irving and the good young pieces that remain, that's enough to be a playoff team. And then after that, they turn around and they look at it and say, all right, next year we're adding a healthy Kevin Durant to this mix, and we feel pretty good about it. The Knicks and the Nets have both made it known they'll go to the full 4-year max that they can give KD, as well as the Warriors have made it known they'll go to the full 5-year max. Now, it came out today that the Warriors are saying, hey, this whole idea of a delayed sign and trade and all these other things, we're not overly interested in doing that. So I would tend to believe it's going to come down to the Warriors and the Nets here. It's just going to be if KD wants to rehab on Golden State's dime and try to help them, run that thing back together with a re-signed Klay Thompson and still having Steph and Draymond and all that, or do they want to go a different direction and try to, bring the Nets up to contention? I just think the Knicks are too far away at this point, knowing they're probably not going to get a couple max guys around him, and that makes it very hard for him to sign up there.
Okay, a guy that I'm really intrigued by, he doesn't get the same attention because of where he played, but that's Kemba Walker. Maverick, Celtics, but I don't know. I got this question from some listeners who said, if Jimmy Butler ended up walking, could the Sixers get involved in a Kemba Walker, or do they not have the cap space to go after Walker, or would they have to let both Walker and Harris walk to be a player for that? And who, the Walker stuff is very interesting because he said that he would work with them, but he can get 5 years, $221 million from Charlotte. Number one, I don't know if I'm Charlotte if I even pay that. I mean, Kemba's a great guy, but he's only gotten me so far. So this whole story very, very interesting to me.
Yeah, I think what if you're the Hornets, there's no indication that they're going to go all the way to the full Supermax. And I think there's a little bit of a misconception out there that just because that's what he qualifies for, that's what they have to pay him is that full amount. I think, there's room in between his, the predefined max that he's saying as Jimmy Butler, that 5,190 and that 5,220. There's room in there that you could do, that you don't have to go all the way to the, Supermax amount. So what I think you're going to see with Kemba Walker is he is going to talk to the Hornets. I think he is very sincere in his love for the city of Charlotte, his desire to stay there. But I think what he's also very real about is, hey, if you don't pay me, I'm not going to, stick this thing out. You're going to have to pay up to keep me. Maybe not the full amount, but you got to pay me a lot. Otherwise, I'm going to have other options. I got Boston, Dallas, both kind of lining up where they would like to hand me that, 5 or that what would ultimately then be a 4-140 deal. And both of those teams, I think, are very willing to do that. And at that point, if you're Kemba Walker, you say, all right, well, maybe we make that a 3-year with a player option at the end. And, when I'm still in my early 30s, I get back on the market again and, try to recoup another contract as my career's kind of kind of taking a turn at that point, likely. So it's interesting. And I just want to break in, as we were talking a lot about Jimmy Butler. Woj just reported, along with Zach Lowe, that Houston has been offering Clint Capella, Eric Gordon, and PJ Tucker to basically salary dump them to try and create space to get a pick to redirect to Philly for the sign and trade for Jimmy Butler.
All right. Well, that is something that probably will keep evolving and gain steam as we get closer to Sunday here. What about Porzingis? That deal, too. There's some news that 5 years, max contract, 158. If they had Porzingis back, they have been kind of a dark horse in free agency there. So Dallas could be a very interesting team. You just mentioned Kemba, Porzingis, Luka. That would be an interesting team all of a sudden.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, Dallas, all along, this has been the plan, that they were going to give Porzingis that full 5-year max offer. They did not give up everything that they gave up in the trade last year and then allow him to, rehab throughout the rest of his time with the Mavericks from February through the end of the season without the idea of, hey, we're going to this full vote. So what they're going to do is they're going to, keep him on the books. That is cap hold of about $17 million or so. And then they'll go spend, they right now project to be at about $29 million in cap space. So they're going to go see what they can do with that, whether that be, we're going to get in the mix on Kemba Walker here, and we need to get up to that first year salary of 32.7. We've got a couple other ways we can get there. We can trade a player. We can waive and stretch a guy. Well, we'll figure that out. We'll get to that number. Or, does an Al Horford want to join up there? Dallas is very serious about putting the right players in place around Luka and Porzingis to be a playoff team this coming season. They've been out of the playoffs longer than they want to be. So, and now there's no more Dirk Nowitzki farewell tour. It's time to build around these kids and get that thing moving forward.
Keith, how great would it be, speaking of the Mavericks and Mark Cuban, NBA Shark Tank, where the owners are up on a stage and the free agents walk up and pitch themselves, and the owners just say, I'll make you an offer, and the player can accept it or not. Let's have live TV Shark Tank NBA free agency. What do you think, man? Executive producers, me and you?
Oh man, I'll be all over it. I would watch this like crazy. I'll executive produce. I'll watch it. But what I also want is, how after the on the real Shark Tank, the guys leave the room and then they're usually like, man, what a crappy idea that was. That company's dead. I want to hear that part of it too. Where they're like, oh, you overpaid. That guy sucks. I want to hear that story.
Let me go back to what you just mentioned, because I do see the tweet from Woj. So Houston is offering Capella, Gordon, and Tucker basically to teams with cap space to absorb their salaries individually. So the Rockets are trying to get the best available first rounder for any of those three. So number one, as you read that, does any team pop to mind? Because they're going to try to redirect that pick to Philly, because the whole thing with Houston that's a problem is if they include picks, they're not all that attractive. But would there be a team that they could send those guys to that could send back, hey, here's pick, and we might be one of the worst teams in the league, you might get pick 7. That could raise Philly's eyebrows a little bit.
Yeah, because what you could do there, think about a team like the New York Knicks. If the Knicks will get in the sense that they're going to miss out at free agency and they're not going to be able to land anybody, maybe they'll want to take on a Clint Capella and bring him in as a building block for the future. And then he's not good enough to really lift them all that far on his own this year. So now all of a sudden, if you get a pick from the Knicks, you feel pretty good about that. You can send that in a trade down the line or whatever the case is. This is going to be really interesting because Tucker, everybody will take him. He's got a very tradable contract. He only makes about $8 million this coming season, so that's easily moved. And then his next year is $7.9 million, but it's only guaranteed for $2.5. So, you're really only talking a guy a little over $10.5 million, $11 million here for the next 2 years. One of the better defenders in the entire NBA. Gordon at $14 million. Good shooter, good scorer. A lot of teams would be happy to have him. Capella becomes a little bit of a sticking point because he kind of didn't have the best year. This past year, he seemed as a perfect fit in Mike D'Antoni's system, but there are a lot of questions about how he'll fit elsewhere. So I don't know that that's going to deliver them what they want, but I think they're going to have to keep working a lot of different angles. It wouldn't ultimately surprise me if one or two of those guys land with Philly. In the end, if they could get Gordon, Tucker, and a pick out of this for a sign and trade for Jimmy Butler, I'd feel really good about that if I was Philadelphia, because you add another wing shooter in Gordon, a really good defender in Tucker, and all of a sudden you're looking pretty good.
Yeah, interesting stuff there, Keith. Let's real quick hit on this. NBA is talking about playing fewer games and having some sort of in-season event. Give us a little information on what we're talking here, because everybody always says, oh, the season is too long. Well, they're never going to shorten the season because they got to make the money. But apparently they're talking about shortening the season.
Yeah, it is really interesting. There's a lot of Adam Silver has made mention many times of the European soccer model, where they have these in-season cups that mean a lot to those teams to win that, and sometimes that's just as important as winning something later, especially if you're a team that's not necessarily in the mix for the true championship or the like. So I think there's something there with that. There's been a lot of talk about it. Do they do some form of play-in tournament for the end of the year? Is there a way where you allow the teams that don't make the playoffs to have a tournament to determine draft selection order? I think the cool thing that fans should feel good about is Adam Silver is married to any of these old conventions. He's very willing to explore and talk these things. The thing that's going to be hard is getting all this past the owners and the board of governors to say, hey, here's where we want to go. This is what we want to do, because what you're ultimately asking them to do is sacrifice, anything less than 41 home gates in the regular season. You're asking them to take likely a loss there, and that's not going to be something I think they're going to jump all over. So there's a lot of hurdles to clear, but I think it is exciting that they're willing to at least approach these kind of things.
All right, real quick, Klay Thompson open to having a meeting with the Clippers if the Warriors don't offer the max deal. Warriors are in such a tough spot here, but they have to go right to Klay with a max deal, don't they?
Yeah, and they're going to. There's no indication that they're going to do anything but. The belief is players who recover from torn ACL is pretty good at this point, unless they're really late in their career. Klay Thompson should be fine. So I think it's, this is kind of a non-story story of, just, hey, again, this is just another one of those probably coming from the agency of, hey, this is out there just in case. Yeah. So we'll see what it looks like.
And I know that you are in the Orlando area. The GM, John Hammond, has come out about Markelle Fultz, said no timeline. Are we looking forward to another summer of Markelle just Instagramming himself and getting people excited? What's the buzz in Orlando about the possibility of him doing anything?
Yeah, he is actually, he's been on the court. He's working. It sounds like he's getting close. They're not going to let him play in summer league, whether he's ready or not. We're not going to see him then. So I think what you're looking for now is next time you're going to see him is in the preseason when training camp opens. But it sounds like he's putting in all the work and all the work necessary. It's a lot of non-update updates where he was working really hard. But when you kind of talk to some folks who've seen him, people say he looks pretty good, and they feel pretty cautiously optimistic that he might be a big part of things moving forward, and they feel really good about that trade that they made. Now I know for your listeners and for you, that all sounds like a very familiar story that never really ended up playing out that way, on the back end for Philadelphia. But Orlando's got some hope here that they're going to make this work, and that Markelle Fultz is going to make a big impact for them.
Yeah, just tell them not to get sucked in. Just wait until they see it for themselves before they start to get too excited. Keith Smith talks NBA with us on Wednesdays here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. We'll have probably new faces in new places by next Wednesday. NBA free agency will be open. Where will they land? We shall find out. At Keith Smith, NBA on Twitter. Thank you, pal.
Yeah, when we talk next week, the whole league might be different. We'll have to have the spreadsheets out and everything ready to go.
Yeah, and we're going to have new NBA title odds. That'll be for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, Keith, take care, pal.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. And Keith Smith, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.